Mormon.
Sure. Well, my name's Matt Peterson. I live in Arizona. Married to a beautiful wife, Melody Peterson, and we have 5 kids at last count. Pretty sure 5. And I've been an Arizona boy since 4th grade. We moved around a little bit before then, but we pretty much call Arizona home. And I served a mission in Brazil. I work as a creative director right now at a charter school. Um, let's see. My first book was Epic Tales of a Misfit Hero. I've really enjoyed getting into that crowd and mingling with other authors and readers and schools and all kinds of fun things like that. And that's a little bit about me. Wow. Well, hobbies. I'm kind of a sports guy. I love anything to do with sports. So we love to watch sports. I love to play sports. I actually run a community sports league for the kids in our neighborhood because my kids are participating in that. I coach a club volleyball team. That takes a lot of my time, so I'd call that one of my hobbies. I love to get outside. I love to mountain bike, to hike, kayak, anything that's outside. You can't tell by looking at me, but I actually do enjoy running. I haven't done it as much as I should, but that's one of my hobbies. I also like woodworking. I like building things. I'm not good at anything mechanical, but anything built out of wood, I can pretty much make. So I like making stuff for around the house. Oh man, guilty pleasures. Let's see. So, well, I mentioned I like mountain biking. Usually, when I'm mountain biking, I go by myself, so I like to plug in with some music. And I would say that 80% of my playlist is probably Taylor Swift. And so I think I don't know if I'm comfortable admitting that, but I just did. But that's what really gets me going on the mountain bike. So I would say that's pretty much a guilty pleasure. Another guilty pleasure would probably be any sort of British miniseries on Netflix. Pretty much addicted to those. Watch a lot of that. Well, the Harry Potter series, I think, is an instant classic. And as an English literature major, I can attest that it is true classic British lit. And I love the Harry Potter. I love everything about it. Also, To Kill a Mockingbird is probably my favorite piece of literature ever. And I can read that over and over again and get something new out of that story. That's one of my favorites. For going on the lower end, I really love this book called Henry in the Clubhouse by Beverly Cleary. One of my favorite books of all times, just because of the innocence of it, and I think I got that. That was the first book I bought for myself. I read it over and over again. I just love being able to build a clubhouse and having your dog with you, and all of the stuff that happens to Henry in that book. What a great piece of storytelling I think it is. Yeah, so Epic Tales obviously is my first book. I had a lot of fun writing it. It's about a 12-year-old boy who goes on his first camping adventure with the rest of the boys in his ward, kind of a scout camp, if you will, but it's a backpacking adventure. And the main character Andrew, he leaves and he feels very weak and simple. You know, he just barely turned 12. He's pretty scrawny and small, doesn't know a lot. And some stuff happens on this trip that makes him kind of grow up very quickly. And I love the coming of age story, and this kind of follows that pattern. But there's a lot of adventure in it too, and I love adventure and I love humor and I love kind of getting into the skin of those characters, and we really do that in Epic Tales of a Misfit Hero. We kind of dive into the world of a 7th grade, 6th grade boy, and kind of see the world through their eyes. And so that's why I think it's pretty fun. I can go back to being that age, remembering the things that I did, and kind of feeling those feelings, and I get to project that through Andrew. So it's a fun adventure. I think there's a lot of humor in it, but there's also a lot of growth, and there's also a lot of spirituality in that book. And so I think it kind of hits on all those levels. I like to say that it's a book that 12-year-old boys like just as much as their moms like. It's really great for the whole family. Man, they come from everywhere. I pride myself as being an observer. So everywhere I go, I kind of think of stories, and every time I tell anybody anything, it usually involves a story to precede it. So I think my stories just come from the world and what I notice in the world. Maybe it's something in the world I see that's missing, and I want to write a story about it, or maybe it's something that I've experienced in the past. But it's really hard to put a limit on where my stories come from. A lot of times they come to me in the middle of the night, and if I don't write them down on my nightstand, on my little journal there, then I forget them. So sometimes they're very fleeting. But I like to kind of notice people around me and see, well, hey, that could be a story. There's a story in there. And then that's when my creative juices kind of start to flow. Wow, that's a great question. So I can't think of any specific event or relationship that comes out of my stories, other than just kind of my entire life. It almost feels like I have like a little filing cabinet, and I kind of file away all those relationships that I've built up in the past, and usually reference those in some way in my writing. And so, it was interesting. I had a kid at church whose name happened to be Andrew, and he asked me, he's like, "Hey, is Andrew based on me?" And I said, "No, because Andrew's kind of a conglomeration of 100 kids that I've worked with as a scout leader or grew up with." And so that's really interesting, is that I think my characters are usually a very good mix of several people that I've known throughout my life. So yeah, it's hard to pinpoint one event or relationship, but I would say all of them really affect my writing in some way. Yeah, well, what's really interesting, so I moved to Arizona, and specifically Gilbert, Arizona. Is a very high population of LDS people. And so when I moved here, I didn't know a darn thing about Mormons. And so when I moved here, a majority of my friends turned out to be LDS. And so, I started to notice things, and I started to notice that, man, these kids are happy, and they kind of do different things. Maybe they do things differently, and I noticed that for a while. I had a couple of really good friends that would always invite me over to their house for, to play or to do whatever, and I would end up staying for dinner, and they would have family prayer, or I'd stay for on a Monday evening for family home evening. And those types of things started to kind of open my eyes. And eventually, when I was 16, a couple of my friends invited me to go to the Temple Visitor Center, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow on a Sunday?" And I said, "I'm not doing anything." And they said, "Well, why don't you come on with us?" And I went, and the feeling that I had there was so remarkable, that I knew this is where I was supposed to be. And so from then it went very quickly. Took the missionary discussions, got baptized a few weeks later, and then just had a very good support system of friends, obviously in high school, that kept me strong, and obviously went on a mission and came back, and have never looked back. And really, I attest that to great friends who never gave up on me, who saw me for who I was, a child of God, and recognized that I could use that same happiness they had in their lives in my life. And so I'm forever grateful for those friends who stayed with me along the way. Oh, that's a great question. I think as members of the church, we have an inherent hope within us. I think the gospel teaches us to have hope. And I think that means maybe even more so that we don't have easy lives necessarily. And, but that hope still prevails. And so I think my writing a lot of times isn't afraid to get into kind of the nitty gritty. My first book is obviously some hard stuff happens on that adventure. It is very age appropriate. But hope kind of winds itself through that. And some of the new stuff that I'm writing, I feel like I want to bring my characters down to put them through some hard things, but never really getting rid of that last shred of hope. So I think as a member of a church, of our church in particular, we have that inherent hope within us. And so I think you'll see that as a subtext in all of my stories. That hope really never goes away, and that's really what the most important thing these characters can search for is, or to remind each other about, is that hope that really comes through the gospel of Jesus Christ, ultimately. Well, I'm working on the sequel to the Epic Tales of a Misfit Hero. So we're going to take Andrew out of the woods and into the junior high halls, and so that could be just as much of an adventure. And a lot of crazy stuff happens to Andrew in this one, and there's a lot of growth. And I think kids will really enjoy it, and I think parents will like the lesson that it teaches. So I'm finishing that one up. And then I'm also working on a new book, which is a baseball book. Like I said, I love sports. Baseball is my favorite, and this is about it's another middle grade piece about a boy who goes through some relationship challenges with his father, and all the while he's a bat boy for a local minor league baseball team. And so a lot of summertime fun, a lot of deep relationship issues that we address in the book, and just a lot of good fun. So I'm trying to work on those two right now, and I have a whole, like I said, a whole journal full of other ideas that I'm hoping to get to very soon. Well, hey, Amazon is the best place to get the book. I encourage you to go to Amazon, check it out, leave a review, good or bad, if you like it. And then also, I'd love to connect on Facebook. I'm on Facebook as Matt Peterson or Matt Peterson Books. And those would probably be the best places to get in touch with me. And I'd love to hear from anybody.
More